Blood Raider ships are very special to me. The Ashmu and the Balagorn are some of the most successful ships that I ever owned, and now it will be time to take a look at the smallest Blood Raider, the Cruor. Now, I have to admit, this is one very happy looking ship. Honestly, one of the best designs in the game, and probably one of the most unique looking frigates in EVE. I have a nanocore, but I did try to keep the original Blood Raider design because the original Blood Raider camouflage is. Now, the Cruor should feel very similar to the Ashmu in combat. Of course, there are some differences. The Ashmu has 4 medium slots, while the Cruor has only 3, but I believe that should not be a big problem. After all, the Nosferatu can be used as a neutralizer on the Blood Raider ships. Now let's take a look at the ship trait description. I think it will be very interesting to see what it can offer. Robots, minus 100% energy Nosferatu overload penalty, plus 15% energy Nosferatu absorption efficiency, plus 15% energy neutralizing effect, plus 20% size wafer effective range, and the advanced Frigate Kamamos will give you plus 25% laser damage and plus 75% small laser tracking speed. Overall, very interesting trait description. The Cruor has 3 high slots, 3 medium slots, 3 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs. 4870 is the overall defense. The Cruor can be both a shield or armor tank. Basically all Blood Raider ships can do that, although they are natural armor tanks, but they can shield tank as well because of their fantastic capacitor performance. And speaking of the capacitor, the Cruor has the best capacitor out of any frigate in the game. The recharge rate and recharge time is really good. It can knock 5 targets. The signature radius is 26.5, scan resolution 861, sender strength 13.7. The Cruor, of course, as any other Blood Raider ship, is not the fastest. It might actually be the slowest faction frigate in the game, but it can be very tanky. Now let's go on to the build. 563.98 DPS, this is with the pulse lasers. Optimal 6.8, accuracy valve 3.25, tracking 660, overall pretty good stats. Now in the medium slots I have one Scrambler, I have one Web which has 29.6 kilometer range, and one small Nosferatu. In the low slots I have one Afterburner, one medium shield booster, and one adaptive shield hardener. On the rigs I went with full DPS, dual burst aerators and one laser collision, dual ancillary power grid routers and one auxiliary thruster in the engineering rigs. And now the nano core, I think this is the Blood Omir core, which is available for the Blood Raider ships. Of course, it's not upgraded, I only have the primary attribute. I think most nano cores give the exact same damage output, so whatever core you use, it's going to be about the same. And the other attributes are over here. Flight velocity, armor, I did pick the extra laser damage because, well, I think that the Cruor can benefit from extra laser damage. And of course the shield is 1806, the overall hit point 7.8 thousand. 2 minutes and 50 seconds is the capacitor runtime. 604.80 meters per second is the cold speed without the afterburner. Now, as for the implants, you have 2 primary choices and a 3rd optional choice. You can use the focus crystal, pulse crystal, or the thermal circulation for armor tank. And I will start with the pulse crystal. Now, the pulse crystal is also known as the Balagorn or Blood Raider implant because the pulse crystal will increase energy usage, capacitor usage for the lasers, but it will increase your laser damage permanently. Now, since Blood Raiders have fantastic capacitors and a bonus on Nosferatus, they are definitely not going to be running out of capacitors, so you will be able to maintain basically the maximum effect of the implant for a very long time. Excellent for PvP, excellent for PvE. Now as for the general units, I will probably go with a Nosferatu unit, the output boost to improve the capacitor, and of course I will go for a shield booster unit to improve the performance of the shield booster. 020 DPS, the DPS did go up a little bit because of the passive effect from the implant. And now let's undock and let's check out the active stats of the Cruor. Overall, I do like this ship. Unfortunately, I feel like in some cases the 4th medium slot might be useful. Perhaps we see some balance this April, and perhaps frigates do get extra slots. That would honestly be very nice, and I would love to see frigates with extra slots. Alright, let's lock on the station. Let's orbit at 0 because that's what I usually do at the start. And now let's take a look at the active stats. Now 8,800 hit points, which is honestly not that bad. The capacitor 10 minutes and 38 seconds, which is really good. And almost 2000 meters per second. Of course, it's a Blood Raider ship and they are not really the fastest, but the extra shield boost performance is going to be very nice. And here you can take a look at the small Nosferatu stats. Surprisingly lasts for a very long time. Now unfortunately I wasn't able to do dual medium modules on this ship. That doesn't work that easily. The Cruor doesn't have a lot of power. After all, it is a frigate, so you can't really expect to have dual medium modules installed that easily. And this implant is not really recommended to use if you are a shield tank, because you are going to be killing your own tank. And it's kind of funny because you can see how much shield it can boost. It does boost a lot of shield, which is very nice. And it has about 1000 DPS with the implant active. But the Cruor can be a pretty decent shield tank. In PvP that's going to be quite noticeable, especially if you're fighting big ships that you can speed tank. You will have permanent capacitor. Actually, you will have capacitor until your target loses capacitor, and then, well, then the target is going to die a very slow death. Okay, so this was the Pulse Crystal. Let's go on to the Focus Crystal. Now the Focus Crystal is currently players' favorite. It has the highest DPS output, it's excellent for missions, and overall a lot of players that I know use it. Now the general unit setup is about the same. I would use a Nosferatu and Shield Booster unit. Now this implant has been nerfed in the last patch, which of course was to be expected, so the charge time for maximum performance will be a little bit longer. I think it's 5 minutes now, and the overall maximum DPS has also been reduced a little bit. But still the implant is very good and you should not have any issues with the clear times. Of course, the main drawback for this implant is if you miss the target, well, you have to wait 5 minutes to get the maximum possible DPS back up. So let's check out the maximum possible DPS of this implant. With every passing hit, the DPS will go slightly up, and honestly I expect even more nerfs. I expect a lot of other implants to be changed, to be nerfed, and I guess it's been about time for that. 1071.57 DPS, and it's slowly going up. This is already pretty good DPS for a frigate, and the Cruor can be a vicious little thing. I honestly really like this ship, and might buy one just to have one, you know, just for collection purposes. Now of course the the level 45 attribute will give you extra stacks, but not a lot of players have the level 45 attribute, so most will have to wait 5 minutes for the implant to recharge if you miss. And for some reason I missed, but fast forward at maximum possible performance. 1,500 DPS, not bad, actually really solid. Very solid DPS for a frigate. Can be used for high sec, can be used for low sec, can be used for PvP. This little frigate can run well in a lot of scenarios. Now, we can also use beam lasers if you prefer long range combat. 14.3 km is the optimal range, 3.5 is the accuracy fall-off, and of course 221 tracking. Now, the DPS will be a little bit lower, but you get extra range, and with this build you can easily go and swap to the long range disruptor. And this build also works really well if you use a medium Nosferatu, because the medium Nosferatu has about 15 km optimal, so you can easily match the laser range with the Nosferatu range, and it is recommended that you use a micro warp drive so that you can maintain a range from the target, a optimal range. You don't want ships to approach you if you're a long range build, so a micro warp drive is going to be very important. Now here you can see that a small Nosferatu isn't really good for the kite build, and that's why I say use a medium Nosferatu. That is exactly the thing that I will do here. Even with the unit that increases the optimal range for the Nosferatu, you will not have enough range on the small one. Basically, for the beam fit on the Cruor, you would have to use the medium Nosferatu in order to get that capacitor from the target. And you can also use a micro warp drive unit for extra speed, because the medium Nosferatu is going to be able to maintain a stable capacitor. Now this is with the small one, and with the small one the capacitor time is not looking that good. So after swapping the build a little bit, now I have a medium Nosferatu, and now the capacitor is stable. 15 km is the optimal range, accuracy fall of 8.82. Capacitor is at almost 100% stability. I'll actually improve the stability in a second. Of course, I have to sacrifice one module. Now I have one small booster, but still the small booster should do a pretty good job at recovering your shield. Again, unfortunately, I wasn't able to replicate the dual medium module build like we can do on the Ashmu. On the Ashmu, you can slap two large modules very easily, a large booster and a large Nosferatu, but on the Cruor you simply can't do that, at least not with the high meta modules. Perhaps it's possible with the lower meta modules, but then the performance might be a little bit different. And here I'll just quickly adjust the general units. In most cases I keep the same units for all of the implants. For this ship that works really well, but I said that I will improve the Nosferatu performance, and that's exactly what I just did. And now the capacitor is still stable, but at 100%. This is beautiful. With this build you can easily run the pulse crystal and you will have 100% of DPS for 100% of time. And again, let me just quickly show the other modules. Overall, I'm very happy with this current result. Now, with the pulse headers, you can also use the medium Nosferatu, although I would replace the long range disruptor into a scrambler, because at this with this build you will be fighting in the scrambler and web range, and I would use a afterburner instead of a micro warp drive. But as you can see, the power grid is nearly maxed out, which is always very nice to see. Now, with the armor builds, basically a medium armor repair, I wasn't able to fit a small Nosferatu, unfortunately. So looks like I will have to change the rigs a little bit. Now the medium shield booster uses a lot less power grid, so of course there's going to be a lack of power grid on the ship. So after changing the rigs, I should have enough power grid for a medium armor repair. I focused on capacitor and on the power grid. These integrations should be very cheap. I think they're like 50 million on the market, and you can easily use the tier 2 rigs for the integration. For the integrations, there is basically no difference in how much power it will give you. And now the build works, and honestly I really do like how this little boat looks. The medium armor repair is going to repair a lot of armor on the frigate, of course, and it's going to be very easy on the capacitor. And with the implant I can improve the armor repair while still having a stable capacitor. So this build is the build that I really like on this little boat, because I get good tank for a frigate and I get really good capacitor. Keep in mind this is stable with a medium module running permanently, and it repairs about a third of armor every cycle, every 5.45 seconds. And if you decide to spend even more ISK on the ship, and if you go with the cheaper combat integrations, you can get even more tank out of this frigate. You can technically make the Cruor brawl battlecruisers and cruisers if you feel like it. And this is what makes this little boat so good. Basically, it does punch above its weight. It can do the same thing the Ashmo can do to battleships, which is always a bonus and always nice. That's always nice to know that your ship can do things like that. Okay, now I had one rogue beam laser installed, so yeah, I had to change that real quick. The speed will be a little bit lower if you focus on the tank, but the tank is looking really good, and I am quite happy with the current results. Now, I did say that you can use the thermal circulation, and this implant works on all armor tanks. Basically, if you don't have the pulse crystal, if you don't have the focus crystal, you can use this one. It will enhance the armor resistance by 20% on all armor tanks. This is a universal implant. Basically all armor tanks can use it, including the Cruor, and extra armor is always nice armor. The units are now set just the way I like them. The attribute is also fitted. And let's take a look at the defense, 8,600. You can definitely see the implant kicking in, and let me show you the active stats. Should be a pretty tanky little boat.
Undocking.
This is basically what I would use on the Belgorn, and probably what I would use on the Chemosh. That's the Blood Raider Dreadnought. Of course, you can't really use the implant for DPS, it's only for the passive effect, but the passive effect is also very nice. 10,333 hit points, and yeah, that's already a lot better. And keep in mind, you can improve the tank even more if you spend a bit more ISK on tank. And if you want to go full tank, you can easily do that with the Cruor. Now, I changed the modules around. You can do this combo, the medium Nosferatu and small armor repair, and now the capacitor is 100% stable. You can do this build with the beam lasers as well, and which is, a very interesting combination, because the pirate is 100% used, 158 out of 158. Very nice, and honestly, I have to admit, very satisfying. Means that everything is laying just the way it should. And
Drive active.
yeah, let's take out this little boat for a spin, and let's see what the Cruor can do. Now, I used the medium Nosferatu build. Actually, my apologies, I used the small Nosferatu build with the medium armor repair. You can always swap around the modules, basically find the layout that works best for you. If you prefer long range combat, then the medium Nosferatu is the way to go. If you prefer close range, then the small one is the way to go.
We're under attack.
And
We're under attack.
the Cruor is primarily a PvP boat, although you can basically use the ship for any content that you like. I still remember the days when the Bloodedis were the most feared ships in the game. Basically, before the implants, before stabs were a thing, Bloodedis were dominating solo PvP. They also were dominating PvP in general. If you had an Ashimu warp on you, you would not fight that, you would be warping out. Same can be said if a Balagorn. If there was a Balagorn on grid, you would be warping out. That's at least how it used to be. Nowadays, a Balagorn is a good snack for a Macariel. A Balagorn became a good snack for a Vindicator or a Megatron Striker, ships like that. But still, the Bloodedis remain one of the scariest and most terrifying ships in the game. One thing that kind of prevents me from using them a lot lately is the fact that there is a lot of stab ships, so the Cinnabal ends up being the way to go for me in most cases. Although I do miss flying the Ashmu, I really do miss flying that cruiser. That cruiser I really loved that cruiser, and I felt very sad for about a month after I sold it, because I just didn't have any purpose for it. At the time there were so many stabs, and the Ashmu wasn't really up to the task anymore. But I think I will actually go back to the Ashmu and I will fly it. Perhaps I'll even fly the Cruor alongside the Ashmu, because why not? We used to hunt battleships with the Bloodedis ships. I was the Ashmu while my friend was flying the Cruor, and we killed a couple B-type rattlesnakes using these two ships. We had so much fun. Bloodedis are so much fun, and I can see them being very useful now, especially in a fleet. With the Evor and with the webs, they can easily hold targets, they can easily kill the capacitor of tanky targets, and they can easily cripple big tanky ships so that they become vulnerable to the incoming fire. But if you have no tank, you can't repair shield or armor, and that's why the Bloodedis are so good and so useful nowadays. So yeah, I guess I'll be going back to the good old Ashimu, and hopefully I'll be able to do some solo with it. I mean, I was able to do solo PvP with the Cinnabal lately, very successful actually. I was also very successful with the Stratius, so I'm fairly sure I'll be able to do very well with the Ashimu as well. I'm actually excited to fly that thing. Very excited to come back to the old school cruiser. The Ashimu is one of my first cruisers that I used for nullsec roaming, and to date I never lost a fight with the Ashimu. That's one thing that I remember about that ship. I never lost it in PvP. I only yeeted one Ashimu at a gate gun to get the rigs back, but that doesn't really count as PvP. In any case, let's go back to the good old Cruor here. The DPS output and the alpha damage is very nice, comparable to the Garmur with the missile implant. I actually like how close these frigates are in terms of PvP, in terms of DPS, and in terms of performance. Now in frigate PvP, the first frigate that gets the first hit basically wins, and the Garmur might be very lethal because of its terrifying missile damage application. And I believe the succubus can also be a good threat, but the Cruor can kill the capacitor of the succubus. So this little boat has a good chance to kill one, but again, in the end, the fight will be decided by the player skills. The player that knows to operate their ship in a better way will of course win, but again, there are so many different things to consider in a fight, so I like to say that the more skilled player will end up as a winner. But again, there is 1,000 other factors that you have to include in that. Now the thing about the focus crystal here is I must not miss the target, or I will have to wait another 5 minutes or so to charge up the implant. In missions, that's going to be very important, and that's why players use beam lasers. Now beam lasers have lower DPS, but they have long range, and that extra range is extremely useful when you can't afford to miss the target. That's why the Apocalypse strikers use beam lasers. That's why a lot of other armor ships that are used for high sec missions or null sec anomalies use beam lasers. Pulse lasers are offering higher DPS, faster clear times, but they also require active play. And I guess in a lot of different scenarios, being able to simply AFK a high sec mission with beam lasers is very nice, but I guess when you have time to play, then using the pulse lasers is also one of the ways to go. From my personal experience in using the Apocalypse Striker, I still did end up preferring the pulse lasers over the beam lasers, because you can easily get the pulse lasers up to 80 km range, 70 km range, which honestly is approaching the beam laser territory. Beam lasers have 100 plus kilometer of range, but the pulse lasers will have higher DPS. As for the Cruor, it does speed tank just fine. You can run missions with both the pulse and focus crystal. You can use both the shield or armor tank. Both work really well.
We're under attack.
The medium Nosferatu is maintaining the capacitor at 100%, which is fantastic. I really like the capacitor stability on this little boat. It works just so well. Now, what was the other little boat that I want to talk about? I think it was not the Astro. The Astro definitely will lose against the Cruor. The Dramiel might be a threat. After all, I used the Snibble to hunt Ashmu. I already destroyed a bunch of Ashmus with the Snibble, and there are a couple ways how you can deal with a Blood Raider ship. Long range or extremely high DPS, and the way that I The story Blood Raiders is with high DPS, although I also plan to buy a Vigilant that will be long range, a Kite Vigilant, also a very nice boat to use. But we will see what will happen. I already mentioned like 7 other ships that I want to fly, but the main issue here would be the East. Now the price tag on the Cruor is not that high. It's actually fairly cheap, I believe. The last time I checked it was 200 million, which honestly is pretty fair for a faction frigate. And I don't really see a lot of Cruor flying around. I don't see a lot of Cruors flying around. They are not a very common frigate to spot. Most common frigs that I see are Dramiels, Succubus, Garmurs, Worms, Asteros, but you rarely see a Cruor nowadays, which is, you know, a little bit sad because the Cruor is still a fantastic little boat. And I also forgot to mention, when you look at the ship from the side, you can see that the Cruor is actually smiling. It's a very happy little boat that just wants to be flown and just wants to be used. So yeah, I would definitely just look at this cute little ship. I mean, you know, I say that the cutest ship in the game is the Astra. That's a very beautiful ship. But there is something very cute about the Cruor, although this thing is a merciless, bloodthirsty boat. It's a Blood Raider after all. So, you know, there's that factor, that cute factor on this ship that is a little bit uncomfortable. You know, cute and deadly at the same time. What a lovely combination, isn't it? But in any case, yeah, the Cruor and the Ashmu might be some of the best looking frigates in the game. I know the Dramiel is also beautiful, although the Dramiel design is, yeah, definitely one of the best ones as well. Actually, let's just settle with this: all faction frigates have a very nice design, because you know it's difficult to decide which one I like the most, because I like all of them, and I'll just put them all at the first place, because why not? That's the fair thing to do. But this is the last ship of this mission, and I cleared this very quickly, so you can technically replace that one adaptive for a heatsink, and you can push about 2000 DPS with the Cruor. If you change the units for full DPS, you can get 2,200 DPS out of this ship easily, which, you know, is actually really good for a frigate. So you can easily run ISAC missions, you can easily run storyline missions, you can run anything you want with the Cruor. It does work. It will have decent clear times, and it will also be fun to fly. I actually have a lot more fun flying the smaller ships than the big ones, because after all, I prefer to move around, I prefer to play tactically, and with big ships, you know, it's also fun to drop a battleship on another battleship, but I simply enjoy the maneuverability and the tactics that are required when you're flying the smaller ships. Smaller ships like cruisers and frigates are slowly starting to be very relevant again, I would say. The current event that we had all smaller ships, battlecruisers, cruisers, frigates, everywhere, and I'm very happy that players do use these ships, because after all they are fantastic boats. And I'm also very happy that I'm able to help you at building your own ship, or at least I'm also going to be happy if I can at least inspire you to build your own build on your own boat. So with that being said, this was the Cruor. Honestly, a lovely little boat, a terrifying little boat, a very, very good and fun little boat that I want to fly for PvP. And well, again, I mentioned a lot of ships, I know, and I plan to fly all of them. So with that being said, I really hope that you enjoyed. I love you all, fly safe, stay safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.